When actors have a relationship off-camera, it can make things awkward on-camera, which the stars of a certain low-budget 90s movie know better than anybody. And that's not the only time cinematic love scenes have gotten majorly uncomfortable. Love scenes aren't just for romantic comedies. They can appear in all sorts of movies, even the most serious of serious dramas. Quite frankly, audiences can often be in the mood for some kind of romantic interlude just to break the tension. Then again, just because a movie can have a love scene doesn't mean that it should. Case in point, the 2005 historical drama, Munich. If there's any movie that doesn't need a steamy encounter, it's almost certainly one about Israeli assassins sent to avenge the deaths of athletes who were killed by terrorists at the 1972 Summer Olympics. After spending a very long time hunting down terrorists, Avner, played by Eric Bana, has sex with his wife. The action cuts between their wild ecstasy and violent images of people being gunned down at an airport. To be fair, director Steven Spielberg was probably just trying to be both artful and cathartic with this scene. And after all, it's not like intercutting sex with violence hasn't been done before, but that doesn't make it any less uncomfortable in this case. After 3 movies about an evil doll possessed by the soul of a serial killer, the team behind the Child's Play franchise needed to expand their universe, and so they decided to have Chucky take a lover. 1998's Bride of Chucky finds the titular killer doll reconnecting with Tiffany, his girlfriend from his time as a human. After he kills her, he then transfers her soul into the body of a bride doll that looks like a blonde female version of himself. A bloody crime scene from these 2 psychopaths follows, and that isn't exactly a good environment for a love scene. But this moment was always going to be strange and uncomfortable, as it involves the most intimate acts rendered with the best technology and puppetry that a mid-budget 90s movie had to offer. After Chucky proposes marriage, amorous feelings quickly take over. There's a lot of loud open-mouth kissing from 2 characters whose mouths don't really move, as well as stripping in front of a roaring fire and the 2 dolls doing the deed in a silhouette that leaves little to the imagination. Making things even more unbearable are all the cheesy wisecracks.
I am anatomically correct, you know.
Few films have received the level of critical derision and simultaneous fan acclaim suffered by 50 Shades of Grey. That's probably because most of the people who like the movie are also fans of the novels that feature infamously corny sentences like, "My inner goddess is doing the merengue with some salsa moves." So it's no surprise then that the movie version presented the same heavy-handed, implausible romance that sees mousy virgin Anastasia Steele transformed into a kinky submissive at the hands of Christian Grey. Each love scene escalates further and further into ridiculousness to the point that the climax of the film occurs when Anastasia freaks out after Christian spanks her too hard. This happens in his so-called playroom, which features hooks, whips, chains, and all manner of medieval-looking torture devices that Anastasia seemingly has no issue with.
Stop. No!
The 2009 sci-fi horror movie Splice raises a lot of questions about the moral implications and personal ramifications of science, particularly the rapidly evolving discipline of genetic engineering. While working at a scientific facility called Nucleic Exchange Research and Development, genetic engineers Clive and Elsa, played by Adrian Brody and Sarah Polley, develop a viable creature by mixing human DNA with genetic materials from animals. Elsa names this creature Dren, which is nerd backwards, and then she grows from a child to a young woman very quickly. Clive clearly finds Dren to be very beautiful, although she's more animal than human with her giant eyes, long tail, and feet that look like hands. It's obvious that we're building to some kind of intimate act between Clive and Dren, but that doesn't make it any less weird when it happens. And it does indeed happen, in a barn where Dren has been locked up no less. It's basically like Clive is getting busy with his coworker and his pet all at once. MacGruber began as a recurring bit on Saturday Night Live that parodied the action-adventure TV show MacGyver, which starred Richard Dean Anderson as a genius who could save the day by making life-saving inventions out of household materials. But in the SNL version, Will Forte plays MacGruber as a supposed genius who would try to do the same thing but inevitably always fail explosively. When MacGruber became a movie in 2010, it needed to be fleshed out significantly for a feature-length running time, so it wound up as a parody of over-the-top 80s action movies. Amidst all the explosions and lone wolf theatrics, those films usually also include a steamy love scene, and so does MacGruber. As Mr. Mister's power ballad Broken Wings plays, MacGruber begins to make sweet love to his wife Casey in her wedding gown. But then things get hilariously weird and dark. The music falls away, and viewers see a bare-bottomed MacGruber grunting away in a graveyard while a groundskeeper watches. Casey actually died earlier in the movie, which is re-established with a cut back to MacGruber, who's now standing nude in a graveyard at night, moaning and talking dirty to a ghost that nobody else can see.
Just tell me what you want me to
The twisty 2003 Korean thriller Oldboy from writer-director Park Chan-wook won numerous awards on the festival circuit and eventually became an international cult favorite. It's not only one of the most acclaimed South Korean films ever made, it also helped put the country's cinema on the map. Without Oldboy, Parasite may never have become an Oscar-winning phenomenon. In the midst of the twisty and unpredictable plot, there's a love scene that becomes disturbing in retrospect after all the mysteries have fully unraveled. In the opening scenes, the protagonist Oh Dae-soo is arrested one night for public drunkenness, which causes him to miss his young daughter's birthday party. After a friend retrieves him from the police station, he's kidnapped and isolated in a hotel room for 15 years. When he's finally released, he wanders into a sushi restaurant and strikes up a relationship with young chef Mi-do. He tries to get his life back together, though he gives up on finding his daughter when he learns that she was adopted by a Swedish couple. Then his captor, Lee Woo-jin, contacts Dae-soo and gives him an ultimatum. If he guesses the reason for his imprisonment within 5 days, Woo-jin will kill himself. If not, he'll kill Mi-do. Dae-soo and Mi-do's relationship grows increasingly intimate, and Dae-soo soon figures it all out. He went to high school with Woo-jin, and he saw him engage in incest with his sister. Dae-soo spread the news, and the sister was so mortified that she killed herself. It would seem that Woo-jin has had his revenge on Dae-soo with the years-long imprisonment, but as it turns out, his plan was even more sinister than that, as the climactic scene revealed that Dae-soo's long-lost daughter is actually Mi-do. Before he became an Oscar winner for Green Book, Peter Farrelly and his brother Bobby made some of the most outrageous comedies of the 90s, like There's Something About Mary, Dumb and Dumber, and Kingpin. That last one stars Woody Harrelson as down-on-his-luck former bowling champion Roy Munson. An attempt to hustle amateur bowlers goes poorly, and he loses his hand in a ball return accident. 2 decades later, he's reduced to selling bowling supplies and spending most of his time drinking. He has little choice but to get in bed with his landlady, played by frequent Farrelly collaborator Lynn Shay, so that she'll be more forgiving with his perpetually late rent payments. That's the uncomfortable setup. A man who suffers from excessive drinking use has to prostitute himself to avoid becoming homeless. There's an even more unsettling payoff. Roy stages an attack on the landlady so as to chase the guy off and earn himself some favor, but she finds out about it and then forces him to make it up to her in the bedroom. Then it cuts to her lying in bed smoking a cigarette in post-coital bliss while Roy throws up in the adjoining bathroom.
You still owe me another month's rent.
Almost any love scene in a comedy could make this list, as they're usually played for awkward laughs. But 2009's Observe and Report isn't your standard comedy. It's a dark and twisted flick written and directed by Jody Hill, the creator of the HBO series Eastbound and Down. When mall security officer Ronnie, played by Seth Rogen, finally lands his dream girl Brandy, played by Anna Faris, their romantic encounter is rather seedy. They're both drunk, which already means that they're not thinking straight and can't give informed consent. Nevertheless, they go back to her place for sex, even though Brandy has ingested a lot of clonazepam and is only semi-conscious. Observe and Report tries to recover this scene with a joke as the passed-out Brandy wakes up and asks Ronnie why he's stopping. But at that point, the creepiness is just too much, and we're witnessing a gross exploitation of a terrible situation. Although considering how dark this movie is, that may have been intentional. The 1995 erotic thriller Showgirls came hot on the heels of director Paul Verhoeven's iconic run of RoboCop, Total Recall, and Basic Instinct. So he was probably looking for a similarly visceral response when he took on the world of showgirl dancers in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, he made a film that's had a rocky reception at best. Some critics cited its campy melodrama as a detraction. And sure, if you're not on the film's unusual wavelength, it may feel like something that would be more at home on Lifetime, if not for the graphic sex, particularly the infamous pool scene. Elizabeth Berkley plays the lead character of Nomi Malone, who writhes around on top of Kyle MacLachlan like someone just threw a toaster into the water. If you can manage to wipe away your tears of laughter, you can literally see all the stunned confusion written all over his face. But Verhoeven's reputation has endured beyond Showgirls, and the film itself has since been rediscovered and reevaluated by a new generation of audiences and critics.
It doesn't suck.
1997's Kickboxing Academy was also released under the far more boring, if accurate title, Teen Boxer. The plot, naturally enough, concerns the day-to-day activities at a kickboxing academy. Ultimately, the kids at the academy have to square off against the kids from another martial arts school. Among those kickboxing kids are a couple of fresh-faced teenagers named Cindy and Danny. They're played by Kyler Lee, years before she starred in Not Another Teen Movie and Grey's Anatomy, and Christopher Commonly, who's probably best known for multiple Power Rangers series. In real life, the two of them are brother and sister, which makes the fact that their characters are romantically involved the height of awkwardness. And the people making Kickboxing Academy apparently didn't think it was too weird to include multiple scenes in which Cindy and Danny passionately kiss each other. At the end of 2000's Requiem for a Dream, each of the main characters are deep in the worst chapters of their addictions. Jennifer Connelly plays Marion, a heroin addict who resorts to selling her body for the drug when she's recruited into doing a show for a bunch of salivating men who jeer and throw money at her and another woman. To be fair, this isn't so much a love scene as it is a horrifically graphic act that occurs amid a swirling, brilliantly edited sequence that weaves together the awful predicaments that each character has found themselves in. On top of that, it also imparts their panic and despair onto the audience through a jarringly effective use of shock value.